All right, so attempt number two at this. Hopefully, internet doesn't act up. So sorry if Tristan, Katana, anybody else that was in this chat earlier, if you guys got booted or anything. Again, I really don't know what's going on. So I'm obviously not gonna. It's something you guys did. It's everything kind of going on my end. So hopefully you guys are able to join the chat back or join back in the chat, and hopefully we get some more people joining us over the course of our hour together. But yeah, so currently up in my room, in my little study area of our room, I might need to head downstairs later. We're still having a little bit of work done in terms of our roof. Hey Tristan, yeah, there's internet issues on my end, so I just restarted the chat to maybe fix that. I wasn't able to really see the chat, so you guys didn't do anything wrong. Like I said, everything kind of on my end. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to stay up here during this whole duration. But if not, I'll maybe move downstairs, move to the basement, and we can continue the chat there. But right now, looks like everything's going well. We'll start here in just a couple minutes. So I just want to pull up my copy of the Blizzard bag. I'll make sure you guys have it ready if you don't already. Last couple of weeks we've been trying to knock out as many of these assignments as possible. We looked at assignment number 1 and 2 a few weeks back. Number 3 the other day. I made a separate video for assignment 4, which was who rules. Then last night / early this morning, made another video. Yeah, there's issues on my end, Katana, so I just restarted the live stream. Nothing you guys did. So a separate video I made yesterday was for assignment 5, the News LA article. It's about like 25 minute video. That article focused on the social contract and the idea of popular sovereignty. So if you have questions or if you're not sure about anything in that assignment, check out that video. Or if you got questions now, I can help out the best I can. But what we'll start here in just a little bit is assignment number 6. Okay, so assignment number 6, which is a dive into democracy, reading and activities, and it's another one of these iCivics assignments, which I take a little bit longer just because there's a couple one of these iCivics assignments, which I take a little bit longer just because there's a couple of activities and a couple of pages of reading and stuff like that. But if you just take your time on it, don't try to rush through it. I think it's something that could be easily managed in our time here. So we'll give just a few more minutes. Hopefully so we get some more people to join. I do have everybody's first Blizzard bag, so I'll get on grading those over this weekend. Get those into the grade book. And if your parents, guardians, whoever have checked your guys' gradebook online, if they still have access to that, I'm probably going to see that like everybody right now is pretty much at like the same point, which is kind of like a not failing grade. It's like a 65 for everybody. But of course, once we grade the work, that grade is going to go up for a lot of us. With everything going on, we're kind of told from the state of Ohio and the Department of Education that we can't hold incomplete work or not attending things like this against students just because maybe they don't have the capability to join. So everybody kind of starts off with like a very high D or like very low C. So nobody's going to fail like this last grading period, but people can still improve their score. So everybody's really starting off on the same page and then working their way up. So if you did your work, did your Blizzard bag stuff, that's fine. I'm sure, especially those of us that have been constantly in the chat and watching these videos and attending the online classes and stuff like that, you guys don't have to worry. It's just the grades may look a little bit weird for a couple weeks or so, but we'll get everything straightened out. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. It's almost a quarter after. I want to make sure we have enough or as much time as possible to kind of dedicate to the assignment because it's one of the little longer ones, but we're really going to take a dive into the assignment, a dive into democracy. We should see that it has, sorry, dog barking, um, has the Parthenon on the front. So think back to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and stuff like that. So some of this for you seventh graders should sound, if we think way back when we were looking at ancient Greece, kind of the birth of this idea of democracy. Yeah, and that's fine, Katana. I know the notifications are very weird for some reason or another. I don't know what the issue is behind it. If it's a YouTube thing or if it's a thing on like phones or computers or whatever. Hey, Hunter. Good to see you here, sir. But it's good that we try to watch as much as you can, so that's all we can ask for. Internet works now. That's good. That's nice to hear. Hunter, we're just about to get started on assignment number 6 in our Blizzard bag, and kind of what I've just been talking about here is just doing a quick recap of things we've already went over. Separate videos have been posted and made for assignments 4 and 5. Yesterday I wasn't able to do any kind of live stream for the 8th grade just because of things going on here at the house. We have a new roof installed. So separate video was made for assignment 5, the News ELA article, the last one of this Blizzard bag. And we're going to get started with a dive into democracy, which is assignment number 6. Again, it looks like this. So if you don't already, please make sure you have your copy of the Blizzard bag. And I'll kind of do the same thing. I'll do the read out loud here. You guys are more than welcome to follow along, or if you prefer to kind of read at your own pace and just ask questions as we go along, that's fine. Kind of figured out that this is maybe the most efficient and kind of direct way to do this and to make sure everybody can follow if they need to. But yeah, a lot of this I think should be review if we're looking at the big picture for 7th grade. It's going to go into some more specifics and a little bit more detail than we were able to in class. But again, really going into, okay, we have these different theories or these different ideas about government. Think back to Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, what their ideas of a correct or proper form of government. Can I what later? Oh, yeah. I mean, come back or watch later whenever you have a full charge or whatever works best for you. But yeah, if we're kind of putting everything together, we were examining these ideas of government from Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, as we kind of read about in the News ELA article. And then we looked into kind of, okay, we have these different types or forms of government. Now, who gets to rule? And that was the assignment number 4, who rules? And what we're going to do now is take a little bit deeper of a look into democracy. And so I form of government we're most familiar with here in the United States. We have one of the variations or kind of one of the versions of a democracy, kind of that representative democracy instead of a direct democracy. So we'll go ahead and get started here with the 2-page reading, and then we'll kind of go over the activities. If you guys have questions or if something's not making sense when we get to the activities or even with the reading, just let me know in the chat and we'll do what we can to kind of help out. So I'll go ahead and get started. Follow along if you guys like to. So dive into democracy. So when the founding fathers sat down to create a government, they didn't just make it up off the top of their heads. They did a little comparing first. They studied different philosophies, the Native American and British governments, and they flipped through their history books to look at what had worked in the past. That brought them to ancient Athens. So Athens, leader of the pack. So in about 507 BCE, before the Common Era, or BC, after centuries of oppressive tyrants and rule by a select few, the people of Athens, which is a Greek city-state, decided to shake things up. They formed a democracy, a government that gets its power from the people, not kings or military dictators. To empower people even more, they practice direct democracy, where citizens create and vote on the laws themselves, not through elected representatives. So that direct democracy is that other form of a democratic form of government where, again, the people themselves are the ones that are voting and creating the laws. They're not picking or voting for others to represent. The representative democracy, that's what we have here in the United States. And if we look back to kind of our vocab, when we look at democracy, and split that word down the middle, demos really meaning people, okay? And crassy, rule of or rule by. So ruled by the people, democracy. So got to get this down on papyrus. We're about halfway down. Okay? So sounds simple, right? Not quite. Democracy didn't just happen. So, like any government, it needed rules and structures to make it run smoothly. But people can't follow rules unless they know them. So the Athenians wrote several constitutions, which are documents that describe the laws and organization of a nation, and included their history and customs in them as well. By writing it down on paper or papyrus, the Athenians established a shared standard for how people should behave and guidelines for what to do if they didn't. Obviously, drawback here is that at this point in history, not everybody could read. It was really still just a thing for the wealthy, for the elite, and for kind of the religious officials. So it wasn't something that everybody knew how to do. But again, you could maybe go to a public kind of town square, kind of that forum where these kind of things may be read out loud or posted so that those who can read would be able to kind of read these rules, read these constitutions. And if you look to the side of the reading there, well, some of it you can see is in Greek, but then they kind of do a little translation on the papyrus scroll here. So the Athenian Constitution was written by the philosopher Aristotle. It can be found today in the British Library in London. So that's pretty cool. Again, one of those primary sources that you can actually go and visit and see. I'm sure it's behind, very, very thick glass and stuff and under careful observation, but it's cool. Some of that living history is still alive and doing well with us. So who runs this place? Again, calling back to some of the previous assignments. So the people. Well, certain people. So to function, democracy required civic participation, which means all citizens had to be active in their government. They had to serve in the military and hold public office. In return, the government gave them rights and promised protection. So was everyone a citizen? Nope, not even close. If you were a woman, a slave, a child, or a foreigner, you were not a citizen. You had no rights. But if you were a free male, 18 or older, and your parents were Athenians, you were a citizen. That meant you were treated equally under the law, had freedom of speech and voting rights, the power to approve or disapprove Athens' laws. So even though, the Athenians, the ancient Greeks had these ideas of democracy, given power to the people, again, it wasn't totally perfect. Obviously, at this time, a lot of people are still treated as second-class citizens or treated as property. Again, not everybody was treated equally under the law, and that's, that was true in the United States for much of our history as well. Initially, when the government is created that we have today, women, African Americans could not vote. It was really only wealthy, white, land-owning citizens or males early on in the United States history. Again, progress is, or history is ever changing. Progress and these movements of equal rights, the civil rights movement, and the women's movement, and things like that. It's like if we have these words that we live by and that a lot of us hold so dearly and hold so close with, that all men are, treated equally and stuff like that, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all these things that we hear in these famous documents, wasn't really being fulfilled if you still had slavery for 100 years after the government is created, or if you still have African Americans and women not being able to vote until again kind of recent in American history. So even though we're taking a lot of these ideas from histories and from countries and nations that came before us, they weren't always perfect, but we're able to change and tweak and really fix and change them so that they do work for us. Okay. So again, if you look over to the side of the reading here on this page, so it's not exactly not exactly government of all the people. Athens' population was about 250,000 to 300,000. Yet only 30 to 40,000 were citizens, and only about 5,000 of them regularly attended the assembly, and kind of like when government, where all the people in the government would meet and discuss the laws. So how to make a law, part one at the very bottom here. So 2 or 3 times a month, the citizens of Athens gathered together to vote on laws. This gathering was called the assembly. So as you know, like a school assembly, but with slightly different list of things to discuss. The assembly was a legislative body, so kind of like Congress, or group of people who made laws. At their meeting, any citizen could speak their mind, and the group discussed everything from financial issues and war to trade, public festivals, and even how the ferry boats should run. To encourage civic participation, they were paid to attend. Not bad. Once the law was discussed, the citizens voted on it. How? By raising their hands, of course, and whichever side received the most votes won. And that was it. The law passed or it didn't. So something as simple as raising your hand would help either pass the vote or not pass the vote. All right, so we're going to take a look at page 2 of the reading, side B. Kind of see that with the people up the top here. So how to make a law, part 2. But meeting 2 or 3 times a month isn't very often. Athens needed a group that could meet frequently and handle the city's day-to-day affairs. So a, quote, full-time government called the Council of 500 also existed. The council was another legislative body. They wrote authoritative orders and are called decrees, discussed proposed laws, and created the list of issues the assembly voted on. The assembly could not vote on law unless the council had debated it first. So really, this was more like part 1. But during a crisis of war, the council could make laws without the assembly. So they kind of have this 2-part system. It's similar to what the United States has with their within the Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. So the Council of 500 gets to declare or kind of put together what is going to be voted on the assembly. However, the council couldn't really vote on it. It was left to the assembly. So we used to see some very early examples of like a checks and balances or this like limitation of power so that one part, whether it was the assembly or whether it was the council, wouldn't be too powerful. Okay. So it's not about being popular. So the second section here, again, right next to one of the ancient Greek theaters. Okay. Some of us tried to make some of these for our projects, and a couple of them I know, like this Nathaniel and Nick's turned out pretty well. Hunter, you had one with Adam. You guys made the Coliseum or another type of Coliseum or an arena of some sort. So how did the council? So it's not about being popular. So how did someone get on the council? Which is by chance mostly. The Council of 500 wasn't elected. They were chosen by lottery. So kind of like pulling a name out of a hat. And not just anybody could have the job. A council member had to be a citizen, at least 30 years old, and could serve only for 1 year, though he could serve 2 one-year terms. So we got some requirements similar to the requirements or term lengths that representatives, presidents have in our government today. So like the assembly, the members got paid to make sure all the regions in the city-state were represented. Council members were chosen from each of Athens' 139 territories. Okay, that's a lot of territories. We have 50 states in the United States. Imagine if we had, almost triple that number. There'd be a lot of representatives. So how many representatives did each territory get? That depended on the region's population. The larger the territory's population, the more representatives it had on the council. Okay, that sounds just like our House of Representatives. It was part of this compromise or this balance that the founding fathers came up with for the Congress. You had the Senate, which had 2 senators from each state, which didn't necessarily favor the big states. It was equal throughout. So a small state would have 2 senators, big state would have 2 senators. But then they also had the House of Representatives in the Congress. Okay, so the number of representatives each state got was based on the population. Bigger population, more representatives. Smaller population, fewer representatives. So that's another kind of direct influence that we get from ancient Greece. A little caption on the picture here. Okay. So the Council of 500 met at the Bouleuterion or Council House. The structure had level seating so members could easily hear and see each other during political discussions. And obviously with it's in black and white, so we can't see it that well, but you can see where maybe the stage was. That's where people would go up and maybe discuss or propose some ideas or maybe these decrees for laws and things like that. So it's very structured like a stadium or almost like a regular theater that you'd go see a play. That way everybody could hear. So the law doesn't apply to me, does it? We're about halfway on the page here. So if citizens made the laws, then who had to follow them? Everyone, actually. The Athenians believed in the rule of law. That meant everyone had to follow the law. Citizens, non-citizens, rich or poor, no matter how famous or powerful someone was, they still had to obey. And if they didn't, they were punished just like everyone else. Nobody was an exception. So this was, again, applied, in theory, applied evenly to everybody, regardless of social class, citizen or not. So even if you weren't, active in making these laws, you still had to follow them. A jury of their peers and peers and peers. So to deal with those charged with a crime, or if someone wanted to challenge a law they didn't like, the Athenians created the People's Court. But this court didn't have a courtroom, lawyers, or a judge. It was a trial by a jury, which means decisions about a case were made by the people, and a lot of them. So the smallest jury size was 201. Sometimes there were 501 jurors, and for really important trials, they had to have 1,001 or 1,501 jurors. Once again, only citizens could volunteer to be jurors, and they had to be at least 30 years old. So during a trial, a person from each side of the case gave a speech to the jury and then took a vote. Whoever got the most votes won a case. And again, the reason why they have that weird number of like 1,001, 501, 201 is to have a majority. If you just have 200 members or 200 jurors, it could be 100 and 100, and that's not necessarily going to give you a decision either way. So you have to have it. Odd number. So with the pictures of the vases to the side of it, okay, make sure we look at that little caption there. So after a trial, jurors voted for the winner by placing a pebble into one of two urns. Okay. So something to think about. The last section here of the reading. Athenian democracy lasted over 200 years, and that impressed America's founding fathers. As they designed the United States government, they incorporated many ideas from the ancient Athenians. Most importantly, democracy, the idea that government gets its power from the people. All right, so what I'm going to have to do here, guys, is I'm going to take my computer downstairs because we're having just a little bit more work done up here. So apologies for the break in the work here, but it shouldn't take too long. Get maybe a little mini tour of my house. So hopefully you can still get a pretty reliable connection here in the basement. If not, please let me know. So I gotta hit some lights so you guys can see my ugly mug. Okay. Oh. Okay. Sorry. Yep, so we're in the basement of Casa de Andrews. That's my horrible attempt at some Spanish. Okay, so like I said, hopefully this is still a decent enough connection for you guys, and we don't have any issues down here. All right, so I think we are just about to get to the last section of the reading here. So something to think about. So Athenian democracy lasted over 200 years. Something that impressed America's founding fathers as they designed the United States government. They incorporated many ideas from ancient Athenians. Most importantly, democracy, the idea that the government gets its power from the people. And again, this was kind of a direct opposite, or it was almost like a reaction to the government that they just broke away and fought a war from. That being a monarch, a king who had absolute power. As the American Revolution is heating up or about to heat up into full-on war, these people, that we see in our history books, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, George Washington, and many others, Paul Revere, people like that, they identify for most of their lives as British citizens. And they felt, as things were kind of, again, getting towards the American Revolution, that their cries for help or that their pleas weren't being heard. They weren't getting any kind of representation. They weren't getting any kind of voice in the government. They thought that was unjust, and that's why they were able to legitimize their cause or their reason to rebel and to break away from the rule of the British king. So that's something we'll get more. Hey Nick, how you doing? That's something we'll get more into next year. We'll see what happens next year for school. a lot of different ideas being thrown around into how could we return to school in, in August coming up. So Nick, what we just got finished with was I was just doing the reading for assignment number 6, a dive into democracy, and now I was just going to go over some of the activities here for the assignment number 6. So a dive into democracy. So there's A, B, C, D, E, F. So there's quite a few, and I know there's this part, the extension activity. If you really want to go ahead and try this, you can. I'm not going to make this a requirement. If you complete it, I will add a little extra credit to you guys. The day's going pretty well, Nick. It's just been a busy, crazy couple days. Having a roof replaced and installed yesterday, so that's why I couldn't do any kind of live stream. So just been kind of busy, but I hope yours is going well. If you guys are all staying safe. But if you didn't hear, this extension activity for a dive into democracy, not required, but if you want to go ahead and try this, and once it gets turned in, we'll add extra credit to your overall score on the packet and stuff like that. So again, extension activity not required, but it may be good practice for some of us. So we'll kind of get through the other things here. So dive into democracy, the activities. So A is called match them up, just really drawing the lines to which vocab and key terms match the definition. So connect the definition to the political term. Again, please refer to the reading that we just completed to kind of help you out. And all of these, if I remember correctly, or most of them, are going to be bold in the reading. So you're not going to see all the terms there, but most of them should be bold for you. So again, you got things like legislative body, voting rights, civic participation, constitution, rule of law, trial by jury, and direct democracy. So there's 7 there. Okay. So again, please refer back to the reading, and that way you can get a easy overview of this. Okay. So I'm just making sure I got everything organized because I had to switch gears, bring everything downstairs here. Okay. I don't want to be disrupted by some of the last little bit of work that they have to do up on the roof and stuff. All right. So, that first section, that first activity is, I think, kind of really self-explanatory. It's nothing that we haven't done before, just really matching them up. Again, look at those key terms, and match them to the definition. There are 7 of them, and look for the bold terms in the reading that might give you some helpful hints. Okay. If you're not sure of any, please ask or let us know in the chat here. So B is asking us to fill in the box. So there are 3 main political institutions in Athens. Okay? Write the name of each at the top of the box. Below the name, write what each group did. Then place a check mark in the box if citizenship was required to participate. Okay, so there are 3 main political institutions in Athens. Okay, so that's the first thing that we need to do here. Okay. So what were those 3 political institutions, those kind of governing bodies? So that's the first thing we want to try to knock out. Okay. And then after we identify what those 3 governing bodies are, or those political institutions, okay, it wants us to write, quick kind of bullet point keywords here. What did each group do? Okay. Did they do things, make laws? Did they decide what laws would be spoken on or voted on? Did they hear the case of a trial? Things of that sort. So again, please refer back to the reading. So some of these we can find in how to make a law part 1, how to make a law part 2. and a jury of their peers, peers, and peers. So those are going to be the sections that I would like for you guys to focus on to kind of help with part B, where you're filling in the box. Again, the first thing is really just to identify what those three political institutions were. Okay? Again, so look in How to Make a Law Part 1 and Part 2. And the last one, a jury of their peers, peers, and peers. So those are the three sections where we could get a lot of that kind of insight to really help identify these three political institutions and what they did. Then the last part, okay, the very last part is asking us to put a check mark. So this could be a big check mark, small check mark, it could be in the title or in the bigger box, whatever works for you. So place a check mark in the box if citizenship was required to participate. So was this political institution open to everybody, or was it only reserved for citizens in Athens? Again, think about who are citizens in Athens. Was it men, women, slaves, children? Was it everybody? Was it just women? Was it just slaves? Was it just men? So who did this apply to? That's really what this is asking. Okay. And then kind of continuing on that, that last little part of B where it's saying place a check mark if citizenship was required. So part C is having us, okay, look at the requirements of what it meant to be a citizen in ancient Athens. So part C, citizens rule. Citizens were the foundation of government. List the requirements for being a citizen in ancient Athens. Okay, so how was somebody, um, how was somebody considered a citizen in ancient Athens? What kind of things what were required? Okay, so there should be kind of four parts here. Okay? So 4 parts, and it's not really kind of any long writing. It's really just one or maybe 2 words. Okay. So what were the 4 requirements to be a citizen in Athens? Again, you can find this in your reading. It's going to come from the first page of the reading. So make sure you have that. I'm just making sure I have mine here. So yeah, this can primarily be found on the first page of the reading. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, so this you can find the requirements for, of who would be considered a citizen and who runs this place. Okay, so double check in that section who runs this place. The second paragraph, that's where you're going to find those 4 requirements. Okay, for who runs this place. Okay. And then for part D, so kind of wrapping up this first activity page, part D is saying math moment. So yay, we get to use math here in social studies. I know you guys are thrilled. Pretty straightforward though. So number 1 is just asking what was the average population of ancient Athens. Okay, you may need to refer to the kind of sidebars or the kind of graphics and images that they have throughout. And you might be able to find this in that same area for part C. Number 2, what was the average number of citizens? Okay, so again, there's that difference between the population and citizens. Okay, so the population is going to be a very large number. Citizens are going to be a very small number, a much smaller number compared to the population. So again, it's kind of a weird predicament, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's a weird thing to kind of visualize or to think about if you have this very large number of citizens, but only, not even half of them are considered citizens. So how does that influence government? How does that influence laws? And how does that influence really the feelings of the people as a whole? So it's going to be very interesting. So after identifying what those 2 numbers are for 1 and 2, you're actually going to look at that percentage. What So using the numbers above, what was the percentage of Athens' total population were citizens? Okay. So, doing finding percentage is hard. And can do some division here. So you can that first number, okay, divided by so number 2 divided by number 1, really, and that should get you to this percentage. Okay, it's maybe not as big as you think, and you can round up if you need to. So again, number 3, you're going to divide number 2 divided by number 1. So whatever you found in number 2, divide that number by what you found in number 1. And that should get you your percentage to figure out how many or what percentage of the population were actual citizens. And then number 4, what percentage of citizens actually attended the assembly? And it's giving you a little hint. Use the reading to help you. Okay. So the assembly, again, that can be found on, let's double check. The assembly, yeah, that's on the very bottom of page 1. Okay, so it's telling us the assembly would be a group of about, what was it? The assembly was legislative body, blah, 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 blah. I just saw it. Where did it go? Oh, sorry, it's in the box above. So the assembly was about 5,000. So only 5,000 of them regularly attended the assembly. Okay. So you're going to take that number, that 5,000, okay, and then divide it by the number of citizens. So again, you got a small number of citizens that make up total population, right? And then of those, that number that you found for number 2, how many of those citizens were actually in the assembly, that really got to vote on the laws in ancient Athens? Okay, so that's a very small number divided by the number of citizens, and that should get you your answer. So again, just very kind of basic math with percentages here and stuff like that. So remember to move the decimal points over a little bit. It's a good practice for tipping as well when you guys get to be that age, how to leave your tip and stuff, since that is something apparently we do here in the United States, is leave tips for a lot of service workers. In other countries, tipping is not a regular thing. In some countries, actually, tipping is seen as like rude, or it's seen as an insult. But that varies from country to country. But the norm in the United States is to tip about 20% of your bill. Okay. So again, just to do a quick recap here for the first page of the activity, A through D. Part A is really just vocab matching. Okay, you get 7 terms, match them to the correct definition. Please refer to the reading to help you out. Look for the bold words throughout the reading. That's going to be key. Part B, this probably the trickiest part on this front page, I think, is to really identify what those 3 political institutions were. Okay, those political institutions of where citizens are actively kind of in control. How is it seen as being rude? It varies, in I guess, to some countries. It really comes down to, hey Jeremiah, comes down to how well or poorly, I guess, these workers are being paid. What their hourly wage is. Here in the United States, generally, your waiters and stuff like that who work at restaurants, who bring you your food and stuff, they make half of minimum wage. Again, and minimum wage changes, or it's different in each state. So I don't know what minimum wage is off the top of my head in Ohio, 10 something, I think, or maybe even more. I don't know. But for example, let's say 10. So a waiter or waitress who brings you your food at a restaurant. Remember restaurants, guys, where we used to go out and eat and stuff like that? So they would make half that. So they'd make $5 an hour plus whatever tips they get from, serving the tables and stuff. So it's a way, I guess, for maybe the restaurant owners to cut some cost, I guess, or to make more money for themselves and things like that, and kind of relying on the customers to help pay for citizens. But in other countries, servers and stuff like that, and they will make full-on will make minimum wage, if not like more. It's just kind of seen as like maybe you're giving pity to them. I would imagine in other countries, instead of like, oh, you think I am in desperate need of this? I don't need any kind of extra help and stuff like that. It's tipping is kind of uniquely American, and the other places tip as well, but it's something that is still practiced a lot here in the United States, and not so much in other countries. It's just a cultural difference. But yeah, again, to do a quick recap over this first page of the activities, part A is really just vocab matching. Part B is looking at these three institutions of where citizens, it's like an active role. Okay, what were those three political institutions? What was the job or what was the responsibility of each? And then it put a check mark if it was required to be a citizen in that political institution. And you can find this on both the first and second pages of the reading. Part C, okay, looking at what were the requirements to be considered a citizen. There are 4 of them. Okay, that can be found on the first page of the reading. Again, that is in Who Runs This Place, in that second paragraph. Okay. Second paragraph of Who Runs This Place, if you're looking for the requirements of what it meant to be a citizen. And then part D is looking at some math, or having you guys look at some math. So the first part, number 1 in D, is again just really looking what is the average population of Athens. Okay. Then out of that population, what percentage or sorry, not percentages yet, but okay, so we have this larger number of the total population. Okay, then how many of that population are considered citizens? Okay, how many of those citizens or how many of those people fit those requirements to be a citizen? All right, then what is that percentage? All right, so what you found for number 2, divide that by number 1. And then number 4, what percentage of citizens actually attended the assembly? The average number of citizens that attended the assembly was about 5,000. So you're going to take 5,000 and then divide it by what you found in number 2. And that would give you your answer. With again, looking for percents. So move your decimal points over. So you should get point something. Okay. And then just move it over a couple spaces, 2 spaces, to get that percentage number. So that's quick recap for activity page 1. And the second page of activities, okay, which is really just E and F, front to back, or maybe it's just here. Okay, so this is one of those times where it's probably going to ask you to work with a group, and it's, again, do what you can enough to meet as much of this as possible, because obviously you guys can't work together in groups and stuff like that. So let's say in a Dive in Democracy, Part E, consider this. So answer the questions on the left based on the reading. Then discuss the questions on the right with your group and write your answers in the space provided. Okay, so again, you can't necessarily discuss with people in a group, but you can just imagine that you are, or kind of just answer them for yourselves. So you can answer those questions, and then what do you think there are different ages for these varying positions? And again, it's asking to do that as a group, but that can be something you still do by yourself or individually. If you like, if you really want to work with a group or partner and text or chat, whatever, that's fine, but not required. Just answer it the best you can. Okay. And the responses for the group discussion, for that group discussion part, keep it short, keep it simple. A sentence will be fine in this case. The same could be said for all these parts. Okay. Number 2 is asking how long could someone serve on the Council of 500. That should be a pretty short and pretty quick answer. And then a couple of these are going to be opinion questions. So kind of whatever your opinion is, that's going to be fine. Like for this first one in that second row. So why do you think Athenians made this rule? And it gives you a little hint to think about. Okay. So what is an advantage to limiting a member's service? What is a disadvantage? Again, it's asking you to talk about this with your group, but you can't do that. So just answer it the best you can individually. Right? And that same kind of thinking can be followed for questions 3 and 4. But please try to answer all parts and answer as much as you can, even if it is asking for group discussion. Again, you should be able to answer this individually. This is probably going to be about some of the most writing we probably have you do in, this Blizzard bag stuff. But I'm telling you again, keep it short, keep it simple. Don't try to overwork yourself. Just do just do enough to answer the question. Okay. And then lastly, part F. Okay, so there's quite a few activities for this one, a dive in democracy. And apologies, but again, it's kind of this important foundation piece for really understanding how influential this idea of democracy is, not just here in the United States, but in other countries throughout the world, but especially here in the United States. So we were looking at those theories and ideas about different types of governments, the social contract theory, it's an agreement, this understanding between citizens and their people. And now we're seeing an early example of a form of government that that worked for a couple hundred years. I'm tired as well. I'm tired as well, but we're almost finished here. We have just a few more minutes. So for the last activity for part F, it's asking us to brainstorm. It says, now that you learned about Athenian democracy, what terms and structures do you think we borrowed in creating the government of the United States? Make a list. Your list can include things that seem similar to, but somewhat different from Athenian democracy. So number your list. We started you off, but you can always add more. So it's asked, there's a list of 8. I'm not going to require all 8. If you can, great. That's awesome. But we should hopefully be able to list maybe a couple, 3, 4, but 8, if you're able to, good. Again, that's awesome. But I get that maybe we're kind of spent thinking, we're busy, we're tired. I get that. So just do what we can. Go back into some of the earlier readings or some of the earlier assignments. Think of things like our Congress. Are there similarities? Are there differences? Think about things like term limits or the legislative branch. These ideas that are very similar, but maybe we change the name, in some form or some fashion. So what are some of these influences from ancient Greece maybe that we have in the United States? Okay. So, you can start off by looking at democracy. Okay. That can be one that I give you here that you can include on part F, democracy. Again, that's a big influence and a pretty obvious one. It's the basis or the foundation, the structure, the core of our government is democracy, that people have the right to vote. People have the power to vote. Okay? But, we use a different style or a different form of democracy than maybe what the ancient Athenians did. They more or less had that direct democracy, okay, where people directly get to vote on the laws, and not a representative democracy where people get to vote on or for other people to speak on their behalf. That's what we have here in the United States. That's why not everybody's writing their own name in to become president or to become a senator or a representative. You get to vote for these other people. So, but yeah, that's the dive into democracy for the most part. We got just a few more minutes before we wrap up here. Take your time on this. You don't need to get it done as quickly as possible. Take some breaks. Make sure you're not overworking yourself. You're keeping it easy. Remember, this extension activity, not required. If you want to go ahead and knock it out or try it, that's fine. I'll throw some extra credit your way, bump up your score a little bit when we're looking at grading this packet, but it is not required. Again, that extension activity is not required, but the rest of the activities are. So A, B, C, D, A through F. Okay, most of them are on this first page. Okay, so A through D there, and then parts E and F. So there's E, then part F. That's the assigned work. That's what I'm asking you guys to do. And it's all in the reading, okay? It is all in the reading. So make sure if they're telling you to look at a specific section, you go to that specific section. If they're giving you a number, use that number. So again, keep the work simple for you guys. Keep your responses simple. If it's asking for a sentence or something, don't start going into full-on essay mode. I'm trying to have you guys just keep it simple. Don't overwork yourselves. Don't try to do too much so you get burnt out and you can't get it done. I know you guys still have a lot of time to kind of get all these assignments finished and complete. not just for my class, but for the other classes as well. But it's okay to take some breaks, maybe take a day off or something. Everybody needs it. I get it, especially with the amount of work that you guys are probably being asked to do. I know it's a lot. It's a lot for us to get everything set up and ready to go for 3 different grade levels. It's a little easier on this end, given the same thing for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because it's something everybody needs. Again, just trying to keep it simple enough for you guys that you guys can help each other out. Some of us have a brother or a sister or cousin, whatever, in another grade. So again, you guys can definitely work together, make this easier on yourselves, or maybe you see a friend a lot, or you are close neighbors with somebody, or you video chat a lot, whether it's like FaceTime or Duo, whatever. But keep going on, keep trying to get as much done as you can. Take some breaks. It's nothing wrong with taking a break every once in a while. But yeah, that pretty much is going to be it from me today in terms of 7th grade social studies. Unless you guys have any other questions, please let me know in the chat. I can hang out for another minute or so. But does anybody have a question or comment before we get going here? All right, so it doesn't look like we have any questions. So that's going to be it for me today, guys. If you came in halfway through this and didn't catch the beginning, you could always watch the video after it gets uploaded. Sometimes it takes a while for these videos to get uploaded and stuff. Or you can join the live stream tomorrow for 6th grade. Again, they have the same thing you guys do. If you need a little help on earlier assignments, check back. I posted a video late last night, early this morning, looking at assignment number 5, which covers the News ELA article, the social contract and popular sovereignty, the Who Rules Act assignment. Another video was made for that. That was posted earlier this week and from last couple weeks. We were looking at assignments 1, 2, and 3. So, but again, I'm gonna go ahead and get going here, guys. Hopefully everybody's staying safe. You guys are taking it easy and you're getting some good work done. But until then, I'll see you guys next week. See you guys.